Item shops have become a staple feature included in all Resident Evil titles that have an action focus. These shops allow for the purchase of things like ammo, healing items, weapons, and even upgrades for those weapons. Some shops offer much needed reprieve from the chaotic events of the game they are found in, while others leave me scratching my head, wondering why they were included in the first place. I want to take a look at each game's shop to see what it adds or doesn't add to the game that it is included in, with the ultimate goal of examining what I find to be the most disappointing aspect of RE9. Hello YouTube, I'm looking to do a little bit of shopping, and today I'm talking about the biggest disappointment of Resident Evil Requiem. The only logical place to start is with the first iteration of an item shop, the Merchant from Resident Evil 4.
Welcome!
RE4's Merchant is phenomenal. He isn't some fully fleshed out character with an expansive arc, taking you through an emotional roller coaster with some satisfying payoff at the end. He's just some dude that rocks up and sells you shit. He doesn't have a motivation, he doesn't need a reason. He just supplies the player with the means as long as they have the funds to pay for it, of course. Where did he come from? Where does he go? How does he acquire his goods?
You don't want to know, mate.
The Merchant being as mysterious as he is adds to this fever dream-like feeling that RE4 has. While the remake doesn't capture this dreamy atmosphere quite as much as the OG, it is there enough where they didn't really need to make any changes to the Merchant for him to still work in this more dark and serious rendition.
That's an exemplary firearm right there, stranger.
Not only does the Merchant fit right in with the atmosphere of this game, but he is also one of the most important pieces for the gameplay of RE4 to be as good as it is. Think about all the things that would be absent from the game if there was no Merchant. There would be no need for pesetas and by extension treasures. No more crowns and jewels and spinels. There would be no weapon upgrades, so the identities of the weapons would disappear for the most part. Adding to this horrifying hypothetical, the roster of weapons would probably have to take a huge hit, since there would be much less of a distinction between each weapon. Guns like the Blacktail and Riot Gun would probably get axed completely, and one of RE4's biggest strengths of being able to tackle the game in different ways with all these different weapons would be gone. Lastly, and worst of all, there would be no shooting gallery. Put simply, if the Merchant wasn't in the game, the weapon balance suffers, weapon variety suffers, replayability suffers, pesetas and treasures are gone, and you lose one of the most iconic minigames ever made. Obviously, I can't say 100% definitively what all would be missing and changed if there was no Merchant, but hopefully you can kind of see how important this giggly freak is to RE4.
Thank you.
Moving on to Resident Evil 5, and holy is this a downgrade. There is no Merchant character, and there isn't even any decency to have the shop actually be interactable during gameplay. You access the shop in this game in between chapters on the results screen. Gone is any sort of charm that the shop had in the previous game. People love to complain about the destylization of UI in modern games, but I think one of the worst offenders is right here from 2009. Sure, the font isn't whatever boring basic lettering is used in games now, and there is some background imaging rather than the minimalist millennial gray, black, and white that seems to have become standard practice. But how can you go from this
Got a selection of good things on sale, stranger. What are you buying?
to this and still feel good about yourself in the morning? There's a bunch of guns in RE5, but unless you're one of the maybe 3 experts for this game, there's no shot you could distinguish them outside of pistol versus shotgun versus magnum. If the weapons are balanced, I couldn't tell you how. They all feel and look essentially the same. Enemies drop money and there are treasures, but they don't feel integral to this game. They just kind of feel like they're there. Like, oh wow, you killed this pretty tough enemy and his jeweled butt plug fell out. Go turn it into the BSAA so you can buy your 18th first aid spray. I firmly believe the shop could be removed and no one would even notice. I don't even know how they fell so far in this aspect. Like, what game came out that influenced this decision? Regardless of what influenced the decisions behind the shop of RE5, it is a huge step back from the merchant and does not bode well for future entries. The shop then takes a 12-year hiatus before showing up again, somehow much more mobile and 1,000 pounds heavier. The Duke is similar to RE4's Merchant in a lot of ways. Village is essentially RE4 too, so the similarities make a lot of sense. The biggest area where Duke differs from the Merchant is in his relation to the plot. The Merchant from RE4 has this strange indifference to the events of the game. He never says anything regarding what happens throughout your playthrough, and he never even says anything relating to Leon unless it has to do with money or the weapons you buy and tune up. It's almost as if the world around him can't affect him in any way. Like he's some kind of ethereal spirit arms dealer. Duke, while very mysterious in his own right, seems to have a vested interest in Ethan's quest. When you first meet him, he already knows who Ethan is and what he's even doing here.
Anyone who is anyone has heard of the likes of you. A hero searching for his daughter.
Duke seems to have an understanding of the village and its inhabitants that is impossible for any normal person to have. Being able to offer Ethan guidance on where he needs to go and what he needs to do next in his quest to save his daughter, as well as having insight into the history of Miranda, the Four Lords, and this village. Duke is the perfect character for this game. He's mysterious enough to invoke the merchant from RE4 while also being fleshed out enough to work as Ethan's only friend throughout his journey.
Do you have need of anything for the road ahead?
Treasures are back and significantly better than they were in RE5. There are combinable treasures. Some particularly high value items are marked on your map. Some optional mini bosses are guarding a few of the treasures, and certain pockets of areas actually feel like they were designed with housing treasures in mind. Weapon upgrades are here, but I wouldn't say they're in top form. Exclusive upgrades are missing, and not every weapon is created equal in terms of how many upgrades they get. I suppose hunting and having Duke cook you meals would be the gimmick that replaces the shooting gallery, which is not a worthwhile replacement, but at least it's something, I guess. Overall, Village follows the merchant formula of RE4 while changing it enough so it does feel different. Granted, it is a step down in many ways, but you can feel that they actually put some thought and effort into the Duke and the game around him. The same cannot be said for the next game, Resident Evil Requiem. RE4 introduced the merchant and everything to come along with him. The next game, RE5, introduced a very lazy, honestly unnecessary shop on the results screen. Village introduced the Duke, a version of the merchant who isn't up to the same quality in terms of mystique and gameplay implementations, but is much more involved in the world and narrative of the game. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. Requiem, much like RE5, decided to take a huge step backwards. Gone is any sort of charm, mystique, or interest that comes from a merchant-styled character, instead showing that even arms dealers can be replaced by AI. I get why they felt the need to add a shop into this game. For one, it fits the pattern, but a real reason could be that they thought a game with Leon that doesn't have some kind of actiony weapon shop might be strange after RE4. Even though RE2 Remake and RE6 don't have a shop, but you know, whatever. The shop here doesn't really feel like it was necessary. You don't even access the shop until you're halfway through your first playthrough. And the selection of base weapons is underwhelming to say the least, and the bonus weapons are kind of ass. I am not moved by the Redemption and Ghost Grudge. There are upgrades for each weapon, but they're a little boring. It's cool that the upgrades can change how the weapons look a little bit, but the guns feel more unique and base, and as you begin to upgrade them, they begin to feel the same. Sure, the Silencer 9 has an integrated suppressor, but outside of that, it does the exact same job the exact same way as the Alligator Snapper. They could have approached weapon balance more like RE2 Remake rather than RE4 or RE8. Like RE2, they could have had you find attachments throughout the game that upgraded your weapons and gave them a defined identity. The first shotgun you get looks almost exactly like the police shotgun, so they could have just put a stock attachment in rather than a whole other gun. The Silencer 9 with its built-in suppressor could have done less damage and maybe have higher precision with an attachment like a laser sight that you could find, while the Alligator Snapper could have done more damage but be a bit less precise, and maybe you find an extended mag for it. This is a very simplified look at weapon balance, but if you aren't going all in on action, this is all you really need. Moving on from the bland implementation of weapon upgrades, we were graciously given this whack-ass credit system to pay for items in the shop. This shit sucks. While it isn't that much different from Pesetas or Lay from previous games, it just lacks any sort of charm or effort. This credit system feels like something that would be more at home in a minigame or side mode rather than being the way players upgrade their arsenal in the main story. While I do appreciate them having the BSAA box actually be interactable unlike in RE5, this is also kind of dumb because it is just the item box that Grace uses with a different menu. They could have taken away the whole shop and just kept this as an item box, and it would have worked better. With RE4 and Village, the impact of the shop, and by extension the merchant and Duke, is felt beyond just being the place where you buy and upgrade weapons. It bleeds into the weapon balance, it bleeds into the weapon variety, it helps the weapons have their own identities, and because of this, their impact is a big part of why the gameplay of these games is so good. The merchant is one of the most iconic characters of all time, and the Duke is one of the most important characters in Village. That being said, I don't think throwing a band-aid on by adding a character to be the face of the shop would fix this problem. It would honestly just make it worse. Because the actual problem that Requiem's shop has is how lazy it is. While the majority of Requiem feels incredibly well thought out and deliberate, you then have parts of the game that feel like horrendously implemented afterthoughts. It just feels like the rest of the game was already made, and then they were like, well shit, Leon needs to have a shop where he can buy weapons, and then they spent an afternoon putting it into the game. This is the most disappointing aspect of Requiem for me. There are just too many things in the game solely so they can say that they are in the game. The shop, insanity, weapon charms, the Nemesis boss fight, and even Leon must die. These things combined with the pretty bad replayability and lack of true weapon variety makes a lot of this game feel really lazy. I don't think every Resident Evil needs a shop like RE4 or Village, but I do think if you're going to put a shop in, it needs to have thought and effort put into it. Don't just give me what's essentially an item box and a credit card and have me do 360 trick shots in order to be able to afford my items. The formula from RE4 is a great starting point that they should build on, not take away from. But what do you think? Am I being overdramatic? Do you like being able to get a rocket launcher out of the BSAA vending machine? Should I be locked up in the Rhodes Hill Care Center for even thinking about this? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and maybe check out the video that's on screen. Thank you so much for watching.